year, School 21 will be finished, which is behind in construction. And with a little help, we may be able to put a shovel in the ground for the new high school. There are several, the public may not know this because we often don't speak about this. When Elizabeth started developing and had the opportunity to build schools, we were very fortunate to have a good team on hand that learned the process to work with the state very rapidly. In order to build a school, there's a lot of things that happen. You have to obtain property. There has to be feasibility studies. There's a lot of things that go into the architectural plans, obviously the approvals. It's a very lengthy process. I ventured for anyone to find another district that was able to have the success we've had in building 10 new schools. If you go throughout the state of New Jersey, you're not going to find that. You'll probably be hard-pressed to find that anywhere in the country. And that's a credit to the people we had working in Louis Cotto's department and planting property. They did a great job of getting all this ready, so when the state said it's time to build, show us the school, we had it already. In fact, there are several plans that are already made and approved at some stage that going forward, if we could find the land and the state will help us fund it, we can build another school. So going forward, although we're not going to open anything this year, the ability to open other schools moving forward is very good. It's very good, and I'm very optimistic. That's why if we go back to the Stein report where it mentioned the land deal, if you live in this town and you follow the story, this is a large parcel of land that sits in I believe that's the 6th ward. And at one time, when there were funds and the need to build a high school was there, the city chose to give that land to a developer because they felt the tax ratables that would come from that property and the building of multifamily homes would be a lot better. In the end, they realized the errors of their ways and they retracted from that deal. And today, the land sits there vacant. It's just an eyesore, and nothing ever got built. So that's a perfect example of how when we're unable to work collectively with all government, the citizens suffer. Unfortunately, it happened, and moving forward, we have to be ready so that it doesn't happen again. So if that land ever comes available again, and the state comes back and says, build a high school, we're going to fund it, we can propose our plan for that lot, and they can move. Granted, that the state gave the city that lot for nothing. It's the old New Jersey Transit site. They just gave it to them. So it wouldn't have cost them anything to give it to us. But, being what it was, it already happened. We all have to be held accountable for everything we do. And that includes our counterparts at the city council. When they decide, to do something like that, our actions have consequences. And here we are, overcrowded. Recently, I attended a meeting where the state estimates that we're overcrowded by 5,000 students. So you can see we have a lot of kids. There's just not enough room for all of them. So moving forward, hopefully 2013, 2014, 2015, we'll be able to expand and bring Elizabeth a few more schools.
One last thing, I just think the public needs to know that when we say that we're in the process of building schools, yes, the schools are part of the plan to increase our capacity, but we don't manage the construction of the school. Everything is done by the School Development Authority. They choose the contractor, they manage the project. So when there's a delay in the construction, it's at the mercy of the School Development Authority that manages the school. So we submit the plans for what type of school we need or what type of school we desire. But as far as managing the construction, that we don't have anything to do with that. That's all done by the state.
Councilman, if I may add.
The other thing we were able to do to alleviate overcrowding as you may know, there's a lot of Catholic schools that unfortunately don't have the enrollment and the ability to maintain their buildings open. We were able to enter into contract with the Archdiocese of Newark and obtain some of that property with very little cost to the board because they paid for most of the rehabilitation, okay, these classes. And we were able to eliminate the waiting list for our 3- and 4-year-old program. And this is a great benefit, we feel, to the community, having such a young community with such small children. Apart from the fact that we believe that education starts at a younger age is better, we were able to allow parents to go back to work and not have this, this daycare dilemma that is now, because anyone who has small children knows that daycare is very expensive. And this allowed a lot of young families to take opportunity and have their children go to school while they go to work. And we benefited a lot. We were able to eliminate our waiting list. And that was, that's another innovative way of trying to alleviate our overcrowding. Unfortunately, it just isn't enough.
What are we going to do? I'm sorry for having my back towards you before. That's why I chose to sit here. Maybe the mic, Elsie or Marie, if you wanted to answer. What we're going to do, we're going to continue. The only thing, if it's possible, just to try to keep the comments as brief as possible, just to try to get through as much as we can tonight. The next question is improvements pretty much planned for School 12. Like, what are some improvements planned for School 12, specifically when it comes to the classrooms receiving air conditioning?
Okay, as much as we want to be able to put air conditioning in every school, School 12 happens to be one of the oldest schools in the city. So the newer parts of the building, as you all know, those who have been in School 12, does have air conditioning. But as of right now, there is a project that's going to be renovating one of the rooms in School 12. I think it's the media center. But as far as air conditioning, right now that facility is not even set up for. It's in the gymnasium. Excuse me. The gymnasium is going to be getting air conditioning. The rest of the building really. It would require too much construction to retrofit every room with air conditioning. So by having the air conditioning in the gymnasium on those days in September and in June that are very warm, we can actually move them into the students into the gymnasium, and this way they can remain cool.
That's another facet of construction that is handled by the state. We submit our needs, and they decide what need they can meet and what they want to fund. Unfortunately, it's a big, it's a big district. We have a lot of needs. We still do have a lot of old buildings, like Fernando said, and again, they handle the construction, they handle the budgeting for that, and we put in our requests and we tell them our needs, and they decide what they're going to fund and how we do. So I would love to put air conditioning at School 15. There's several old buildings that get really hot on the summer months and towards the end of the year, and we know it's a problem, but unfortunately, it isn't a quick fix. It's not something we could just go in and put an air conditioning unit in every classroom.
Thank you. Just moving on, the next statement is actually a statement, it's not a question, I'm just going to read it through. It says, I'm grateful with the education system at Elizabeth Schools. I have one stepson in Lower Academy. He finished in School 31. We had a wonderful experience with that school. My son is 5 years old. He's actually studying in School 50 in pre-K. My husband and I are very happy because there we can learn he's very happy because there he can learn many things about how to help children after school at home. I'm sorry, I got that a little confused. It says, let me just continue in the back. We think taxes are in good hands when it's investment in education, thanks to the Board of Education in the City of Elizabeth. Thank you. Moving on to the next question, it says, is the Elizabeth Board of Education planning to extend the school year? Let's say starting the school in August.
I don't want to send my kids to school in August. August and ended up in, that has not been something that
I think everyone there answered.
I do feel that teachers need time off also. We do have a lot of great programs before and after school. We also have the 3 and 4-year-old program that is unique in this area. I work in the school system, and we have a 4-year-old program half a day, into transportation. So there's a lot of things that Elizabeth has to offer, but extending that would be a little bit too much. I think School 26, which is one of the model schools for that, will continue to have it, but at this point, no, I think that teachers do need time off, at least staff and everybody else like.
So no, they will not take it.
I'd like to comment on that.
That was,
I actually have my son is in 26, so I do sympathize because I can't even do a vacation. So I do understand that, but I think that we need to take time to look at the results from what happens when we do extend, if it's really worth it or if it's not worth it. I don't think that I would want to extend it myself personally because of my experience with my son being in a school that starts in August. I think I complained about that when I first got him into school, and then I went to the superintendent, not even a board member, but as a parent, and said, that's too much, you know. So that's something that we can look at going forward, but I don't know if we have any plans to do something like that. However, keep in mind that I know that all the way up to the top where the president is, he is thinking about extending the school year at some point. So that's something that we all need to, talk about and maybe visit later on down the road.
and one thing with that question that was written, it wasn't clear if that person was somewhat for the extension or not wanting it extended. But thank you so much for your comments. Moving on, this question says, what steps is the Elizabeth Board of Education taken to lower the amount of secondary age students who drop out?
Secondary age?
Age students.
We feel that we've come a long way, and we realize that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the high schools. But we realize that also that education isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And moving forward, when we decided to change the schools from K to 5, middle school, to K through 8, we realized that that was going to directly impact the high school kids at the times. Once they got through that whole system, that sense of community that they had in the grammar schools going up to 8th grade was going to translate to a higher performing high school in all of the high schools, not just in Elizabeth High School. Also, our high schools are overcrowded. That's one of the reasons that we're building a new high school. We've requested that the state provide us with 2 more high schools. Because as Carlos said, we're 5,000 over. So that means bigger class sizes, and it makes managing it a little bit more difficult. But we're very aware of the issues at the high school. We're working diligently with the administration to make sure that all the students are given the best education that they can and that they stay in school.
One of the things I think that we also did was we actually, when we decided to, I think this was Blueprint 2, when we decided to change it from one high school to 6 different high schools, it sort of kind of gave the children a direction. And I think that because it was one big unit at some point, they didn't have a direction. And when we decided, along with the administration, decided to break it out into 6 high schools, I think that helps. So with that said, that's been only going on for 2 years now. So you're not really going to see the fruits of that labor right away. It's a process. It takes time. So I think going forward, we'll be looking at that. We'll probably either be, we do all kinds of things by creating a data dashboard so that we can see the high school drop rate, drop out or anything like that. So we can at least try to focus on how we can get them to continue to stay in school. And the first thing that we actually did do in Blueprint 1, we did K through 8, and then we went to Blueprint 2, and we did the breaking out of the high schools to 6 different high schools. Hopefully this is going to change, and maybe, I think that may eventually change the culture of the actual high school environment.
Okay, I want to add that retention probably is the ultimate goal for all of us, but also I want to, as a social worker, I do meetings like every 30 minutes for the past few months. I've been doing them to try to get our children to stay in school, on regular ed and special ed, but it's a two-way situation. It takes the parents and the school to work together. The schools cannot work out miracles if the parents don't cooperate. And once
if I may piggyback on that, this is a lot of what we want to do. It's things like this. We want to hear your concerns. I often hear it when people say, well, my son's going to be in high school in 2 years and I'm terrified. They can't afford a private school. We hear you. We know. We understand. But you have to also remember that the community is also responsible. And as a community, we have to hold everyone accountable. I mean, we have, anyone in this room not been touched by drugs indirectly or directly in your life? In a big city like this, we have drug problems. We have gangs and violence. This is the real deal. This is what happens when you live in a large urban setting that is Elizabeth. Too often, the good people leave. Okay, they leave, and they, as soon as they get a good job, they want to go. Okay, and then the folks who aren't as wealthy to leave stay behind. And with social economic problems come drugs, depression, crime. All these things happen to us. It's not unreal. You know, no one here lives in a castle. You know, we're part of this community. I could have probably left. I see one of my neighbors here. She can tell you I'm not rich. At the end of the day, we have to work together. You know, gangs are a real problem in our society. Those kids in high school, those are the ones that get affected. Late middle school, 7th, 8th grade, there's someone out there looking to talk to your child about joining a gang and committing crimes and risking the rest of their life to prison or drug addiction. So it's just not the schools, you know. We just can't send them to school and expect the principals and the administrators to teach them morals, self-respect. This starts at home. You know, this starts at home. We have to instill in our children, I believe, a sense of worth, an ability to want to do more, and to be proud of their city and who they are, self-esteem. This is all collectively. The school system, there isn't a book we can read to them that instills that into their mind and they go. No, we can't teach them that. Those things are done within the community. At home, through the churches, through faith-based groups. That's where that starts. And that'll lead, when the community comes together, and we start to instill that in our young people at a young age, it's going to take time. Okay? Unfortunately, it's going to take time, but it starts today. We don't wait till tomorrow. We start doing it today. And eventually, you're going to see more kids graduating high school, prepared to go to college, prepared to get good-paying jobs, and turning the city around, staying here and building it back up. Now, you can call me a dreamer, and that's fine. I will continue to dream, and I hope you will continue to help me dream and build that dream together. It starts with the community.
Thank you very much. I know, even myself, that so many times when we expect a certain standard from our youth, they rise up to it. Like if you have low standards, they won't feel as though there's nothing to achieve. And something that I personally compliment the Board of Education for is the amount of credits they need to graduate from high school. And that's something that really prepares them for the future as well. I don't know if someone wants to just touch on that really quickly.
Well, I I mean, this was asked at another town hall meeting that I attended, and I remember, someone saying that can we possibly think about maybe considering that they reach this number and it's as opposed to that number. I'm for setting the bar high, because I don't feel that as a parent, you should say that your child cannot accomplish to reach that goal. As a parent, you really should be saying to your child, you can do it. You set it high and they'll reach for it. And we experience that. We have evidence that happens by setting it high with our administration, and they are tested regularly, and we see the results. And it's coming back. 330 kids making perfect scores. I mean, that's not a large number, but to us, that's a big number compared to 11 when we first started out. And if you look at that, that's a huge difference. So yes, you do set the bar high. We do that because we have expectations. You know that if you set the bar high, those kids will go there. If you don't, they have nothing to go. I hear parents say, well, my child can't do that. That's the wrong attitude. Personally, I would never tell my child you can't do that. You can do that. And if we collectively and collaboratively work on getting it to them as parents, as educators, as community leaders, and everybody else, it starts where you have to establish a support system. The support system starts at home, and then it trickles out into the community, and then education, and so on and so forth. It has to be all collaboratively working. The child has a responsibility, the teacher, the principal, the administration has a responsibility, and the parent has a responsibility. If everyone's not working together, it's not ever going to get to where it really should go.
It takes a village to raise a fire, right? You know what I'm saying?
Now moving on to the next question. Will there be any sport teams for children in the grades 1 through 3rd grade?
Well, it depends on we don't know, but actually we could talk about it. I'm across sports. I was both involved in soccer. There are also, different schools here for different teams in sports. Not only is the Board of Education, although we're very supportive, I never seen a district that supports sports at this level. We provide with facilities, which is one of the things that most people look for, but also parents who look at after-school activities. I have 2 children that graduated from the public schools in Elizabeth. I did enrollment in different activities. I did have to pay for some of them, but it was worth it. Kept them away from the streets. I gave them time. I used to drive them back and forth. Weekends, you spend with your children because there's a lot of activities going on during the weekends, and during the summer, long weekends, and that's a good opportunity to spend with your children and share time.
That's actually a good idea. And when we discussed putting some of these meetings together, we were hoping to get a few ideas, because unfortunately, we don't always get this. We have our meetings, like I said earlier, we had a budget meeting where we proposed to spend nearly $500 million to run the school district, and no one showed up to say, I want you to buy more jelly or more peanut butter. Nobody cared to even come and say anything. So that was concerning to us. And so we hope that, some more questions have some of these ideas, and I think it's worth going back and discussing at another board meeting with the rest of the board, hopefully to look into what it would entail to have a program, a sports program for small children. I know my kids right now would probably love it.
You know what, and on top of that, I would have to say that I know there are all types of legislative things that we have to follow because, the district is highly regulated. So with that said, we have to speak to our assistant superintendents and our superintendent to find out if there are limitations to that, because I'm sure that there's something that's something we just have to kind of like look into more further about sports, because I don't know if there are any limitations or anything that we may have that we can't do something like that? So that's a really good question. They're here, so we'll definitely write that down and make sure that we ask that
I
question.
will say that that's at the recreation level. When you play sports, the little ones are considered recreation. So that's one of the things. I know that the city may run some programs, and that's at the recreation level. There's no competition. It's not a competitive level or anything like that. Even they drop like to 7 years old to, they used to have like the under 7, 8. Now I think they just went to 7 because a lot of children got, they were upset, they didn't win, and it was detrimental to the children. So a lot of these things are recreational and may be implemented. Maybe we could, but we have to go like Ms. Mon said, there's a lot of policies and regulations that we have to follow.
And whoever asked that question or had the suggestion, you want a little prize. I think they're really happy with that idea. But one of the things too, I know that the board members, and including myself here, we're not meant to have all the answers to every question. And just in case some of you didn't put your names on them, but if there's a specific question that you really want follow-up on, feel free to pull any of the board members, any of us, the superintendent, on the side. Just let us know right afterwards, and we'll get back to you. Moving on, this parent is concerned because it says, having my child's academic curriculum too accelerated. They feel as though it's too accelerated. They have felt and observed that doesn't allow their child to properly retain the material.
Well,
I'm sorry, I just want to finish up. It says, it's hard for them because it's moving too fast and making the deadlines, and their opinion is, how will the child benefit from it?
well, definitely every child could be educated. Every kid has a different learning style. And it's up to the teacher will know who's the different, when you group the children in the ABCs or the higher lower video curriculum, they have to be in reading math groups. I don't know if this one is specifically is with the gifted and talented. It's an accelerated program, so I imagine it's that. Children have the ability. If you see that your child is not to that level, please talk to the teacher. That's the best way to decide what kind of program, or if anything needs to be modified, can he handle it, he cannot handle it. I think the best person to talk to is the teacher. And also, you're going to need to help them at home. Going home and helping them do their homework. Children cannot do up to 5th grade. Children need some type of help at home.
I'm sorry, it's the same type of question, but I think this is something sometimes parents encounter. If they have gone to the teacher, but they feel as though they're not getting the results or the response, what is the proper steps of continuing to get that addressed?
If you've gone to the teacher, the next step is go to their principal. I would highly recommend that if a parent feels that the child is in a course that is moving too fast for them, it's the only way you're ever going to know anything is if you as a parent hold the teacher responsible, hold the principal responsible, all the way to a board member responsible. Accountability is very important, and no one's going to ever know if there's a problem if no one is going to make sure that we hold accountable to that child learning, issue. So I think it's very important that you speak to the teacher. If you still haven't gone and received what you needed, you take it to the principal level. That principal should be able to help you and direct you. If you still feel that you have not gotten, we always have a process that's being done. Then you can take it to the Board of Education and speak to an assistant superintendent. If you feel like you've really exhausted everything else and nothing has been accomplished, but there are avenues you can take.
Services.
Yes, constituent services is what we have. We have it available for the parents to actually come and at least, express their concerns. So this is definitely something that, it's available to you, and I highly encourage you to use it, because that's the only way we're going to be able to make sure this entire district moves forward. That's why I said it's a collaborative effort. So please hold us accountable.
Even if you don't have access to a teacher, we have the internet, you could do it through technology, not even coming to school, emailing the parent and the teacher. There's a lot of communication. If you don't have a computer, can I send a little note with your child? There's a lot of ways that you communicate with the teacher and let them know what's going on. Or set up a time, a phone call. Sometimes they have prep times, they could utilize that time to call back the parents.
I can tell you this from a personal experience. My daughter was at 28 and she moved over to 22. It was a big leap for her. When she was at 28, she was doing really well. And we were proud, and it was good for her. She was a good student there. When she was put into another class with other kids who were just as good or better, and a teacher who was moving the curriculum, to use your phrase, quicker, it was a challenge. And we were concerned as parents because you don't want your kid to fall behind. You feel for them. You want to help them. You can't do their homework for them because you want to help them, right? So we found that the best way to do it was to communicate. Now you may say, well, you're a board member, you have... No. I'm going to tell you how we do it. In my house, my wife's the boss. Okay? That's the truth.
That's in my house, too.
Okay, well, then I know. Okay, when it comes to that, she made sure that she got an email address for the teacher, a phone number, okay, for that teacher, and we communicated. Now, yes, perhaps because of my position, they may have communicated fast. I don't know. I will never know. That could be. I'll leave that to you to determine. But I have found with parents that I've dealt with who have come to me with these concerns, when it's taken into account at a school level, the teacher first, okay, request a meeting, go to that meeting, go in with an open mind, express your concerns, write them down if you have to. You don't want to miss anything. Listen to what the teacher's telling you. Sometimes we close up because we don't want to hear that our kid's the one that bites or kicks or hits. We don't want to hear that. Sometimes, our kid's the one hiding or he's the one pulling the other kid's pencil. We don't want to hear that. But you have to listen. It starts with communication. In the event that doesn't work, okay, what we have done, go to the principal. The principal's in charge of this school. They are responsible and held accountable by the superintendent of this Board of Education, okay, to move that school forward. They are the leader of that school. They are empowered to move that school forward. And every child that is dropped off that day at school is their responsibility and their child. And if that child is not getting the best education possible, that principal is failing that child. And we're fortunate enough to have great people in our schools who understand that. And they love our children, because to take the vocation of education, you have to love children, or you're not going to be very good at it. You're going to really suffer, because when you give you 28 kids every year, if you don't love kids, you're going to have a hard time.
You'll be in trouble, right?
You're going to get a lot of trouble. And then we were able to, as a board, create the Office of Constituent Services. Apart from that, from people being able to call constituent services, many board members and myself, we hold office hours, okay, where we sit and we take appointments and we sit one-on-one and we listen to concerns and we try to help navigate the system and facilitate the communication process. But the important thing is to communicate, whether it be a note in your child's book bag, whether it be that waiting right after school and saying to the teacher, I need to talk to you about my son or my daughter's is having a problem. When can we meet? They set times for this. If you use email, that is a great way. I know not everybody has access to the internet, but if you use email, that is a great way not only to communicate, but to keep a record of what is said and to watch the progress. Watch the progress throughout the school year. I found that's going, and I'm happy to say it. My daughter brought home a report card the other day, and she is catching up, and she's doing well. And it's because we're involved. So when you're involved in your child's education, it's evident. You'll notice the difference right away.
Everyone working together. Moving on to the next question. It says, are there any plans to rebuild trailers that were supposed to be temporary, which are in poor condition at the older school site locations? And just because of time, why don't we try to keep it within probably like 2 minutes?
That goes again to overcrowding. Trailers was a great idea the state had. I mean, the superintendent probably could speak to this. I don't know, we got the trails are in Corzine, or was that prior to Corzine? Who's the education secretary then?
There are a few types of court positions. Some came in,
Our superintendent, Bob Lunas, by the way.
There are two types of trailers. They call them, in the olden days, actually in first grade, second grade, I was at 23 in the portable. So they used to call them portables, and now they're called temporary classroom units, TCUs. And all the kind of tannish colored ones that a lot of our preschool students are in, those came in the late 1990s, 2000, about, as a result of the Abbott versus Burke court decision that mandated 3 and 4 year olds be educated in cities like Elizabeth and 30 other communities. So the state couldn't build permanent classrooms fast enough to educate all those students. We have right now 3,500 3 and 4 year olds in our program. Some of them, most of them in our schools, and about a little over 600 out in partnerships with community providers. So one of the solutions for the state was to put these TCUs in our district. It was a temporary solution. There are older portables from way back, 43 now, so there's a portable over at School 23 when I was in first grade that's still there. But they're meant to be temporary, but if you don't get to build the facilities fast enough, then you still have to use them or then replace them. The vast majority, the short answer is the vast majority came under McGreevey-Corzine administration through the School Construction Corporation, and now it's called the School Development Authority. And it was in response to a Supreme Court order to increase, to provide education to 3 and 4 year olds. So there is a plan. It's called the Long Range Facility Plan. And that plan calls for all the preschool classrooms to be included in our school buildings and to continue the partnership with the community providers that we have out there. But as you can see, as a result of the Supreme Court decision, the construction of school buildings on a large scale, every construction project over $500,000 is managed by the state for us. And they have been moving a little bit slower these days. In 2000s, you saw we put up a bunch of buildings with the state really quickly when they had the cash, but the cash has slowed down and they haven't been bonding as quickly. So they're finishing School 21, which will have preschool classrooms in there. And we're going to be adding the new academic high school that you saw on the TV, on the slide that's back here. And then the governor just announced they're going to give us more elementary schools. So we're in discussion right now with the state to determine if that's going to be one or multiple school buildings, or if that's going to be, well, we haven't come up with a strategy. They just have identified that our overcrowding right now is in the elementary grades. To the tune of, they were throwing out the number about 5,000, but at the elementary grades, the number is about 4,000 students overcrowded. So they're in our building now, in our classrooms. The long-range facility plan would retire the portables, right? So when we have all the school buildings built in permanent structures, the TCUs would be taken offline. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. Just want to let you know, some of the questions are actually repeat. There's a little bit of overlap. Someone asked again about the extended year, so that was already answered. Two other statements. They're more like statements. Like this one says, school number 20, John Marshall, doesn't have a cafeteria and new kitchen. I'm not sure. But that's more of a...
That can be, yes.
Yeah.
That goes to
to the inadequacies that we suffer under because we don't have the buildings. That's an old building. That's a very old building, and it has its challenges, and it's an unfortunate reality. Can we tell you we're going to school overnight? I wish that was that easy. Right? If that was that easy, we'd have a lot of happy people.
This is a comment. The City of Elizabeth has a great deal of proud, hard-working, committed teachers who have demonstrated effectiveness. Please heavily consider the impact that risks have on our high-achieving teachers. Thank you. It's just a comment. Some people, they put multiple questions on one paper. I'm going to choose probably one that's different from the ones that we've already discussed. This one is a topic that I know is something that we all hear from all different levels, whether it be at home, in our faith-based communities, at school, of course. This one says, how are bullying, how are bully-like behaviors addressed in the school system, and what type of process is in place for that?
Okay, definitely that's a good question. Every school in the state has been mandated to implement a program for bullying. There is a person in the building that is in charge. It will go to the principal. From the principal, we have 20 days to respond, and it will be followed through. In Elizabeth, we have an excellent system. Every board meeting, the administration and the board members, they have to be given a report on what's being done. If it's in fact bullying, every request that is made through this system or through the schools, everything is reviewed. And if it's decided that it is a case, they will have to follow through. If it has to be counseling, or a child needs any change in schools or any type of service, it will be done. But everything is carefully done and is mandated by the state, and we take this very seriously. Anytime that there is a request, even from a parent, that the parent feels that a child is being bullied and all that, it's our job to follow through. And Elizabeth has an excellent system. I do attest to that. I also serve on another board through the Union County Service Commission, and the superintendent reports to us any cases that are being investigated. So, we've been working, and it's been implemented already, and it's worked, so we have no problem with it.
And just to add to that, that's actually a new law that actually was passed, and we are actually, they're still trying to figure out all of the hiccups, I would have to say, or things that they can do to actually make that law more effective. And we do have a dedicated or an assigned person. The superintendent has assigned someone to handle all the bullying, which are called HIV cases, if they become an HIV. It has to be observed, it has to be looked at, and then they determine as to whether or not it becomes an HIV. Investigation has to get done, and it all starts at the school level, and then it's all reported through the administration, who they then come and report it to the board. And before every board meeting, we get a report that we actually vote on and discuss any HIV cases or any incidents and anything that's related to this new bullying legislation that was passed. So it's still really new, and I think that the legislator of the state is actually trying to figure out if there are any other things that they need to adjust in that particular law.
I can say something on bullying. Although we've been legislated to do this and to do that, when your child is bullied, no legislation in the world is going to make you feel better. That's the reality. That your child is getting picked on. The danger is, as well, not only the child gets picked on, it's the child who gets labeled a bully. See, because in bullying, there's two victims. There's two victims. The bully himself is a victim as well. Because they're children. They're children. And obviously, something in the bully's life is playing out. And he feels, or she feels, that they have to make another child feel uncomfortable or do this. Unfortunately, there is too much legislation. kind of ties our hands, because then we have to follow all these processes. It goes back to education and communication. If you identify that your child is being bullied, you need to be the biggest advocate for your child. You have to stand up for that bully for your child. And I don't mean confront the other child. I mean, go to the school and advocate on your child's behalf. And make sure it gets resolved. Whether it be they move your child, or they separate the classrooms, or mediation, or the help for the bully, whatever it may be, whatever the recourse is, you cannot let it continue to happen and sit back and just say, they're just kids. They're just kids. No. The bully has a problem as well, and the victim, of course, gets the brunt of it, and usually the one that suffers the most. But we want to help all the children. We want to help them all, but the community has to help in that. There's no legislation that can come out of Trent and stop bullying. That's just ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. In my opinion, that's legislation just overstepping their bounds. They've gone too far. They want to come in your house and tell you how to raise your kids. You know, at the end of the day, your child is dropped off in school, you expect them to return safe and educated. That's what you expect. And you have a right to expect that. You have to demand that happens. That starts with you and your responsibility to your children to make sure that you are by far the biggest advocate for your child. So I suggest to anyone here who's been a victim of bullying at any point, or your child, to advocate on your child's behalf. If you feel, for any reason, that on a school level it isn't getting resolved, you need to follow the proper channels and move it all the way up. Should it have to come to the board level, let us know. As my colleague said, we do get reports, but a district this size, they're filtering through what is a bully, what isn't a bully, what might be a bully, what was a bully, who's going to be a bully. It's just too much. It's really legislation, you know, to confuse the masses. Well, I don't know of any actual a bully or a victim being saved or bullied through the legislation. So advocate for your children, educate and communicate. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to add too, when it comes to bullying, one of my experiences throughout the years, I work with youth very closely, a youth program that I run in the city of Elizabeth. A lot of times to me, the bully is the one in greatest need. There's a reason why they're a bully. And a lot of times when someone mentioned before, it takes a village to raise a child, when we work together, helping those that are the victims, but also those that are the declared bullies. Usually I'm even drawn sometimes more to them, because I know if I'm able to reach out to someone who's a declared bully, who knows how many people we prevent throughout the school year, throughout the years, from being bullied.